Okay, looks like 5 o'clock and we can get started. My name is Laurie Fournier and this is Splitting and Fitting, measuring patterns and adapting them better for cosplay. A lot of times when you are working with a commercial pattern, how many people have made a commercial pattern and been really disappointed in how it fit? Oh, like everybody who's ever made one. Even if you've adapted it a bit, if you don't have good measurements, it's not going to get you where you want to go. Think of the pattern as being a compass. It points you in a certain direction. Think of your measurements as being GPS. It actually gets you where you need to be. A lot of times, so with commercial patterns, the only people who fit them are that company's fitting model. If you are not that company's fitting model, they will not fit you. And you have to adapt them. So first, before you do that, you need to get really good measurements. Not everyone is the same size in front that they are in back. Not everyone is the same size from side to side. Not everyone wears the same size on top as they do on bottom. This is not too big of a problem if you have the correct measurements to change your pattern. So, what I'm going to be doing first is I have Alyssa and Christina, and I'm going to be using tape to mark on Alyssa the critical measuring points. I have a reasonably loud voice, so I'll be standing in front and doing that. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to guess that you guys will probably be able to hear me. It's a nice small room. Christina's going to be writing down the sizes, and that's going to give Alyssa a perfect set of measurements to use for next time that she does any kind of clothing. Also, we have a pattern here, and I'm going to show you how to split patterns to make them fit better. Okay? So, we're going to start with that. This is some artist tape that I picked up at Dickwood. Any kind of tape will actually work. This is just nice because it's skinny. An end here. And it has an end on it. Oh, there we go. I think, there we go. Always fold over a little bit of your tape at the end. It will make it much easier to pull off the next piece. So, the first measurement we're going to do is, I'm going to be marking Alyssa out in a grid. And these are what you're going to be using for measuring yourself. This is a lot easier if you have someone else doing this for you. Okay, so we're going to go top of sternum, down to waist. And bend a little sideways. Yep. And you can find the waist on somebody by having them tilt a little sideways. Straighten back up. Is that sticking good? It is. Okay. Put your arm up to the side. This is going to show us where the side seam should be. And if you turn sideways a little bit, on your costumes, on any clothing, if you have a side seam, it should be vertical. If you add too much, if you add equal amounts in front and back, you might find that your side seam is forward or backwards. Okay. Same thing this side. Should have used the blue tape. The blue tape that sticks to everything. Okay, so we've got the sides marked. Now turn around. And the top of the thoracic spine right here, this is where you're going to be measuring from. And I usually measure down to the waist here. Another critical point is going to be back width. So we want to go from shoulder to shoulder. If you've ever made something and tried on the jacket and the shoulders are just sticking way out, or you can't move your arms, this might be the problem. Okay. Now, we're going to do waist. And we're going to divide it into front and back, because not everybody is the same size as front and back. Is that about where you were, waist-wise?
A little lower.
Okay. Let me move that back tape a little bit. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then we're also going to measure front and back hip. So about there. And then back. This is where it helps to have someone doing this for you. Hard to do this one by yourself. Okay. We're going to do bust line. So arms up a little bit. And want to go right across the center of the bust line. We don't want to pull really tight. We don't want to squish things. Okay. And we'll do the same thing on the back. Arms out a little bit. Good. There. Okay. And we're also going to need crotch length. So, I need you to stand your legs a little bit apart. You're going to start at the waist for this. Let's get that centered a little better. You're off. I'm off a little. It's not you that's off, it's me that's off. Okay.
You want to hold that?
Yes, please, hold it at the waist tape.
Okay.
And we're going to come up to the waist in back. There. So, we have all of our critical spots. Is that sticking? Yep. Don't rub the tape too much. Any questions?
You do underboob as well?
You can, yes.
If they, like, because some patterns have like a high bust, is that
They-
like here? Or-
Yes, yeah, you can add high bust and under boob also. Again, tape is your friend. And this is essentially just rib cage.
There are two people with hands off.
Okay. All right.
You use clean arm side and shoulder?
Yes, you can do that. Today we're not doing that part, but yes, that would be another thing you can do. A reasonable number of people have different size arms left to right, and you want to measure them and make sure they're correct. And
Are these the same measurements you would do on all genders?
yes. Let's get the back rib. And back, high bust. Arms out again. There you go. And this is almost cosplay already. There you go. Not quite a costume, but you know, it's close. Okay, any other questions before I start measuring? Okay. Okay, so this is just regular tape measure. All right, so we've got I like to tape first. If you're working with someone who has done these a lot before, they may not need tape. But tape is a nice way to ensure that all of your measurements, that you're consistent where you're measuring from. Okay, now, a lot of times when you have clothing, you may have made a pair of pants, you sit down and they're strangling you, or they rip, or something like that. What we're going to measure now is hip ease and waist ease and crotch depth, which is going to be waist to crotch. So, let me borrow a chair. And you're going to want to the person is already measured standing, and now we're going to measure seated. So this is going to go around your waist. Okay, and total is, let's do front and back. Okay, seated waist, 19 front. Okay. 16 and a half back. Okay. And I'll have you stand up a second. Yep. Hip is going to be a little bit, because we already know how much we have to have for that. We're going to put this right around here. And then have you sit down. There. Okay. And seated is what we want. Okay. Stay seated. And slide to that side of the chair.
This side.
Yep. I should probably have been on the other side because of the camera. Huh?
Okay.
Okay, crotch depth is going to be waist to where she is seated. So a triangle is a nice way to do it. And her waist is right here. And we have 7.5. Have I missed anything?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Excellent. Okay.
Will this video be available somewhere later?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, and then you do the back one, and then the back one.
Okay.
So, from the back of the neck to the waist.
Mm-hmm. 14 and a half. Oh, hang on. I wasn't up where I should have been. 16 and a half. And then front. Yep. So, sternum to waist. 15. Okay. And you can take the tape off now.
Yes. I can do that. We can.
Okay. All right. So that gives you the measurements that you'll need to make changes on patterns. If you measure your pattern and and you realize that you have to add, like, say, 2 inches at the bust, you need to know if you need to add 2 inches to the front, to the back, to it evenly. If you need to take in a waist, you need to know these things. And the waist to knee measurement. Pants patterns generally have a taper to them, and they taper to the knee. If your knee isn't in the same position as your pattern, it looks a little sloppy. Okay. Yeah. Let's head back up. You got the ones on your back for you.
Yep. Just leave it there for today.
Okay, any questions so far?
What was your name again?
Alyssa.
Forget it for Alyssa.
So if you're wearing like a specific bra that you may know gives you more volume, would you suggest wearing that bra while taking that measurement for the bust line?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
For,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry. For any type of garment you're going to wear, you want to make sure you're wearing the proper undergarments. And that, you want to make sure you're wearing the proper undergarments. That includes like bras or other support. It can include if you're going to wear like a corset or a waist cincher, even like if you're going to wear like biker shorts under it, and shoes. So because especially if you're wearing heels, it can change your height. So you want to wear any undergarments you have while you're taking your measurements.
Was there?
You were doing the seating on the crotch, and you're saying this can be done for both men and women.
Yes.
Is there a little bit extra you have to do for the gentleman?
It's going to come out in the measurement. In general, men's pants have a little more space in that area. The crotch depth in particular is a really critical measurement. You can alter almost any clothing, and some things are just a lot harder to alter. And if you have the incorrect crotch depth, that's really hard to alter once on a finished garment. Okay. No. Okay. Now, on to pattern splitting. We just covered wear the underwear that you plan on wearing with your costume. How many people wash their fabric before they do any kind of cutting or anything? Oh, okay. Pretty much everybody. Treat your fabric the way you're going to treat the garment. If it's something that you are going to be throwing in the washing machine, throwing it in the dryer, treat your fabric before you cut it out the same way. If it's something like, say, a wedding dress, something like that, some very elaborate costume where you're not planning on putting it through the washing machine, you're maybe spot cleaning, you're dry cleaning, don't put it through the washer. Okay. When you have, ooh, that was fast. When you are altering patterns, you know the little reference marks that you have, the little triangles in the sides of them? Those are for lining up your pattern pieces, but it's also for lining up any prints or patterns on your fabric. So if you have, say, a sleeve that you're putting into a bodice, those reference marks for the sleeves, that will also help you match up your patterns. K-dramas are a great example of this. K-dramas have really pretty good budgets, and you can look at the clothing and those patterns match up so nicely. And once you start looking for that, you'll see everywhere where it doesn't. But, you know, I mean, lining up the pattern might take an extra 1/8 or 1/4 of a yard per garment. If you're making several thousand garments, it makes a big difference on your cost. Anything? Okay. Okay. So, reference marks on your patterns, that's the important part to keep where you want it to be. That's the important part to stay stationary. You don't want those bits to move. So if you are adding on to the outside of a pattern, you're moving them. When you buy multi-size patterns, you have all of those different sizes that you can cut out. And then if you want to make them a little bigger, maybe you need more space on one of them. Maybe the only pattern that you liked is only available in like extra, extra, extra small. Yeah, you're going to want to be able to change that. That said, get a pattern that is as close as possible to what you actually use. hip measurement is more important than waist measurement when you're buying a pattern. It's easier to change a waist than it is a hip. And what you want to do, this is going way faster. I wish you guys had more questions.
They will, I'm sure.
Okay, so. This is a back piece from a pattern that Alyssa picked up. And this is, trying to see the pattern manufacturer.
New look, simplicity.
Oh, new look, okay. I think that's, is that Simplicity that does that one?
They're all
Yeah.
big, they're all the same.
Okay,
So New Look, Simplicity, Vogue, Butterick, McCall's, they're all by the same parent company now. And they recently switched it so that you can access all of those, including the Berta patterns from Germany, all on the same website. Simplicity.com.
Berta is actually my favorite pattern company of them.
But Vogues are really confusing.
But they're so gorgeous.
There. One of the things, patterns that have more pieces to them are more complicated to put together, but it gives you the opportunity to have a better fit because you are not changing as much on each individual piece. You might be adding, if you have, say, a jacket with 2 front pieces, 2 back pieces, and side pieces, you might be adding 1/4 inch to each piece. Whereas if you have something with a solid back and 1 piece on front, you've got to add all of that into just 2 pattern pieces. So.
Oh, and before she gets started in her fitting, one of the things I'll point out is a lot of the pattern companies, they'll have your combined measurement of front and back for your bust, your waist, your hip. I like to do it by splitting your front bust and your back bust so that it's easier, like she said earlier, so it's easier to know where you need to add extra. If you need to add all the extra to the front or if you need to add extra to the back for your, like your shoulders or your bust or whatever. But you want to take those 2 numbers and add them together, and that's your combined measurement to start with.
Okay, so this is what I frequently use to transfer patterns to. It's about $26 for 100 yards at Lowe's. This is landscape stabilization fabric. You cannot iron this. Little personal experience with that.
How bad does it stink?
Oh, it melts way before it burns. But yeah, this stuff is great, works perfect for that. So, we are going to look at what we have for measurements for Alyssa and see if we have to change anything on this. We're going to pretend that we have to change this a lot. Let's do some pin fitting. Is everyone familiar with pin fitting and have you done it before with patterns? Oh, this will be fun. Do you still have the target on your back?
I don't think so.
Nope, it's done. So, pin fitting is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to take your pattern and your pins, pin it together at the seams, pin it together where the seam allowance would be. And where's my pins? Oh, they're there. Also, if you point all your pins in the same direction, you're less likely to stab the person.
It's okay, I already stabbed myself 3 times yesterday, so. And that was low. Yeah.
Oh, well, you are wearing black, which is a good color, just in case you bleed on this. You're pretty much always going to have to make adjustments on a piece when you cut it out. The closer it is pattern-wise before you cut it out, the better. The less you'll have to change. So what I've done is just pinned it together up here, pointing all the pins out and down. Lining up the reference marks and going right at the seam allowance.
And most sewing pattern companies, the seam allowance is a standard 5/8 of an inch.
First question, how do you do this with cats?
Yeah.
Lots of fun.
Oh yeah, when we were...
When we were trying to video chat prior, her cat kept like jumping on the keyboard trying to say hi. Usually if I'm working in my sewing room, I'll have one cat sitting on the fabric I want to use and one cat sitting on the pattern I want to use, so they have lots of fun.
Yeah, sewing with cats is a panel in itself.
The most fun is when they jump up and try to stick their foot into the needle while you're sewing.
Oh, mine haven't done that.
No.
I used to have one that liked to pull the pins out. He'd grab the pins by the head, pull them out, and leave a little bit of cat spit right on the pattern. Oh, yes.
If you do this by yourself, or do you really need a buddy to do pin fitting?
You
Go ahead.
can do it by yourself. I do most of my fitting by myself, but the more you do it, the better you'll get.
Sure.
And it is definitely easier with someone else.
Have you like ripped pattern pieces doing pin fittings on yourself?
Yeah, so I actually, one of the things I do is I'm really terrified to cut out pattern pieces like that. And I'm really terrified of ripping tissue. So I always get really cheap wax paper from the Dollar Tree because it has like a really papery side, and I just use a mechanical pencil, and it's fairly thin enough and see-through enough you can trace all of your lines and everything. And that way, I also like to do it because I tend to do a lot of alterations for myself, so I find it easier because I like to keep the original pattern intact in case I want to make it for someone else or make it later on or use it for another costume. And then that way my original pattern is as is, and any changes I make, or if I mess up on a change, I can still go back to my original. And I also, when I'm taping, because the wax paper is only 12 inches wide, so if you have large pieces, especially for jackets or menswear, you tend to need multiple pieces taped together. So I also get like a really, don't get the cheap tape from the Dollar Tree because that will peel off sooner than you can use it. But do get like the magic tape so you can also write on that and not the glossy tape.
Okay. So here we have this pin fitted. We don't need to fit both sides on the front because she's symmetrical front-wise, and we know that the two pieces are going to be the same. Now, side seam is straight up and down.
Yes.
We want to make sure that that is straight up and down.
Yep.
If it were not straight up and down, what you would do is simply add to the front piece or the back piece, add to the front piece or the back piece, depending on what you needed to do.
Where would you add it at?
Ah, good question. And that was the next thing we were going to go into. Perfect. Well, I want to just point out one more thing. Put your arm down as much as you can. One of the things that pin fitting will also let you do is get the shoulder slope right, because that's one of the harder things to get. If you are just measuring, it's really hard to get that part. Pin fitting will allow you to do that. This gives a lot sharper slope than what her shoulder actually is. So, let me have you turn. So we would actually move the pins down on this to here, and when this garment was finished, it would fit her better. Okay. Now, we're going to unpin you from this.
So the basic of pin fitting is you're going to make your tissue look like the garment you're going to be making. And if you do alterations to your tissue or your pattern piece, repin fit, try again, look at yourself, admire yourself in the mirror, especially if you're working by yourself, to make sure that everything's looking right and straight, like how you want it to look.
Now, I'm going to adjust the pin fit on the shoulder on this because the shoulder slope is a little more extreme. Okay, arm out again. There. And you can see that shoulder's a little bit better that way. Yeah, so pin fitting is a great way to get your shoulders correct. Okay. Now, we take out the pins, discuss amongst yourselves. Any other questions? No? Wow.
I guess when so just for the shoulder seam, for example, to make note of that, you just kind of crease it, and then is that where your seam line is going to be along that
Yes.
crease? Okay.
Yes.
And if you're pinning it to yourself too, you just kind of want to pinch it a bit, hold it, and then you can put a pin right along where you want it to be, and where the pin is going to be your new seam line.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have to mark your pattern?
Yes, you would mark your patterns. Some people will retrace their patterns, like Christina was just saying. Make a stop at Lowe's. Landscaping department.
It's a new trick I just learned from her. I'm really excited to try it
Yeah,
out.
she's heading to Lowe's pretty soon.
Yes.
If Lowe's fabric landscaping stabilization cloth is sold out where you go, you'll know why.
There's a question on the floor.
Yes.
My question was, in pin fitting, is this where you would recommend adding or altering the darts, or would you do that later at a different fitting?
Okay, so what you're going to do now, so what you're asking is at what point are you pin fitting and at what point are you altering the pattern?
The darts.
Specifically for darts.
Oh, for darts. Darts are going to be a little bit different. But yeah, in general, darts are, yeah, you're going to be making note of your darts at that point. But a lot of times your darts are going to be a little more complicated.
So
in moving them.
Kind of the short answer is, when you are doing your pin fitting, you do want to pin your darts.
Yes. Yes.
Just like you're going to pin along your seams, you want to pin out the darts too, to make sure that the darts add the right amount of fullness that you need, or the darts are taking out the right amount of fullness, and that they're facing the right spot. Because just like you want to wear the proper undergarments, depending on your undergarments can change where you need your darts at.
Yes. Yes. What she just said.
Yeah. And then if you need to adjust your darts, or there's things called like full bust adjustment, small bust adjustment, that's a whole separate panel.
Yes. That
So
moving darts around for that would be a different panel completely.
Yes.
That would take up a lot of time.
Okay, so this would be a good time to note if you had to do that,
Yes.
not to make major alterations. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so anytime that you change one seam on a garment, if we made the shoulders wider, we would have to change that spot on any other pattern pieces that touch it. So if we make the shoulder wider in front, in back, we're going to have to do the same amount in front. Now, this one is nice because we don't have a lot of reference points on it, and we have a little breathe in here. So what I like to do if I am making changes, let's say that this fits you perfectly up top and we just need to increase the size on the bottom. What we'd do is we'd actually take and cut. Thank you. I'm waiting for the sound of like screams or something. Cutting a pattern and using my fabric scissors.
instead it's done silently.
Okay, so what I've done is just cut this up to here and left the shoulder seam as is. If we were expanding this, say we needed 2 inches on the back waist, we would add we'd add 1 inch on this because this is half of it. So 2 inches total, you need to add half. And this is where we would use this lovely stuff. Yes, please. Tape it down to here. Hold it out a little. There you go. Perfect. We would tape this down, slide the pieces apart. You maintain the shape of it, you maintain all of your reference marks, and you have added size to your pattern. It's basically doing that. If you needed to add length, you would cut it and then slide those pieces apart. Yes?
If you were making it smaller, would you move them in?
Yes. Yes. Make it smaller by sliding them in, make it larger by sliding them out.
One other note is a lot of pattern companies will have lines that say shorten or lengthen here. You can use those as a guideline, but if say, I don't know, you don't have to stick to just those lines. So like here, there was no line that said widen or narrow here. She just cut it right up anywhere.
In particular, we could put this back up here now. If you are working on something with, say, princess seams, add the same amount to each section. If you simply add space in the middle of it, you've just moved the seams out, and you might have the right measurement, but it's not going to look very good. So if you're trying to expand your pattern, and you have, say, 4 pieces for the front of it, you would slice each one of them down the center, slide them each apart the same amount, tape them back together, and pin fit. Okay.
So then do you just measure the pattern, or do you find
Yes.
that information somewhere in the pattern?
No.
Or, okay.
So this pattern here.
Yeah, that one's, I haven't cut that one up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, oh no, it's the other one that has it.
Yes. We could tape it back together.
We could. All right, so this pattern here, and it's very typical of a lot of the store-bought patterns. It has a line right here, and this is kind of the guideline. So you would try to match up on this part here on all your pieces, and that will tell you, this will give you that measurement. So on this one here, because this is also, sorry, this is a wrap top. So on this one, it just gives you your guideline for your waist, but it also has your guide for your center. So what you would do is you would measure where it has your waist, and since this one doesn't have your finished measurements, you would measure the pattern pieces themselves to get the finished garment measurement.
Minus the seam allowances.
Correct.
Which is, most commercial patterns are, as you said, 5/8 inch seam allowance on them. Figure that in when you are measuring your pattern pieces.
And it's generally written on there if it's an exception.
Yes. Yeah, on most patterns it'll specify 5/8, and if it's something different, it's going to say, cut to sew 5/8 inch seam allowance, cut to 3/8, things like that. Okay. Anything else?
The pin fitting, is that where you can like take in the waist if the waist and the hip
Yes.
are two
Yes.
different?
Yes.
What does that look like?
Let's get some tape.
Yeah.
What kind of tape? This tape?
Yes, that tape. You picked a pattern that fit you. Sorry.
You did too good.
I could have cut out the extra small size.
That would have been easier. Now, let's say that we're going to make some changes on this one and stick some tape on it. Come on, Dad. usually pretty good at this part. Moving tape because, you know, it doesn't always go where you want it to be. We're going to make the waist a little smaller. And then we're also going to change the shape of the shoulder on this. And remember, anything that you do to the front piece, you have to do to the back piece. So we are going to fold this down and do a little tape on that. And then we're going to do the same thing to the front one. And we're going to repin fit.
I buried them.
Oh, no, not that bad. They were pretty out in the open. Now, on this one, I've changed the shoulder angle. Always put your pins in the same direction and point them away from the person's head. Stabbing people is wrong. Even if it's like a little accidental with the tape, or with the pins. I'm going to put a little piece of tape on here because otherwise. There we go. Now, on this one, I have taken it in a little bit on the back, and I've altered the angle of the shoulder. Because this fits you pretty well around, this is going to fit good, and the rest of it, not so much. So, arm? No, it's not. That's the back.
No, it's actually the other way around, but that's okay.
Doesn't matter.
Nope.
Yeah, this is a wrap front, so.
Actually, the pattern of the dress. This would be the front of it, and then the wrap like ties around in the back. But weird. It's kind of.
I would have put it the other way.
It's our starting point. You can do whatever you want with
Yes, you can change this however you want.
The pieces are just shapes. So even if you're trying to like alter a pattern for a cosplay character or just anything, you kind of want to look at the basic shape of the pattern pieces and, you know, use that as a starting point too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
this is to ensure a good fit.
Yes.
You can also use the same techniques to create other characters with the pattern pieces.
Yes. Okay. I think you have a question.
Yeah. So if you have to change, like multiple measurements in one garment, so like that pattern piece has for the top, so like increase one and decrease another.
Right.
Would you make 2 cuts then?
Yes.
And, okay.
Yeah.
Because I usually have to, in increasing the bust and decreasing the waist, and it's, when you just size up a pattern, it looks baggy and awful. And that's something I struggle with.
It's multi-size patterns are nice because you can just cut it to the closest part for each part of you, and then further refine that with your measurements and with pin fitting.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so.
I'm noticing on this pattern that it gaps in the front kind of oddly.
Yeah, this is actually, I would have put this with this in the front. Apparently the pattern, I misread it. This is the back.
Okay.
Do it on the other side.
But you can do, yeah, we can put it in this way. Move carefully when you're doing this part.
Yeah, I wasn't fitting the bust with the gapping badly, and so.
Here, got that. Yep.
Okay.
And then this one has a, this is cut on a fold in the center.
Is
So-
it meant for stretch fabric?
Yes,
Aha.
yes. I can't imagine doing this on a non-stretchable fabric.
Yeah.
Although if you did it, the whole thing bias cut, maybe. Yes,
So a weird measurement that I sometimes have to lengthen is the one between my shoulder and the bust, like the back gap there.
yeah.
Where would you cut it on, regular bust, kind of broad front? Or lengthening that section?
I think it would depend on the pattern and how many pieces it is. That would be something because you don't want to, how's the arm side on it? Does it fit well?
Arm sides are usually fine. It's just the way that my shoulders slope and my bust and, all.
Just need more
I have a lot
space.
of space between there and there, so.
Okay, so you just need more space in that part. What?
Yeah, because usually what happens is that where the bust on the pattern is supposed to hit doesn't hit me in the right spot, and so I have to lower it so that it's, my nemesis so far has been Regency for much that same reason, but it does affect other types of patterns, and so, but it's just it's a measurement that doesn't necessarily, you have in your taped outfits and things like that. It's one that is weird for me. So I just wonder, since I have to lengthen that a lot, where would you cut that on a?
I think I would cut that one.
I would probably cut it, probably along the center neck, about, kind of where you need to lengthen it at. And just like how she did this one where she cut to the seam allowance, but not all the way through the pattern piece. You're gonna cut towards
Two
the,
here.
you're gonna cut towards the armhole.
Kind of up at an angle a little bit, or
Yeah,
straight across?
cut it a bit at an angle because you need a little bit more space right up here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna cut, like she was saying, across here, spread the pattern out.
Okay, so as a general good rule is that wherever you need to lengthen, you just want to cut halfway between those two measurements?
Yes,
Perfect.
yeah, in general, that's a good way to go.
Does that change the bottom lay of the pattern though?
It will.
Or do you have to just?
Yeah,
Flatten.
if you do that kind of an alteration on it, it's going to change the angle of the front, so you're going to need to retrace it and also check the length of the bottom of it to make sure that it stays the same. So trim there too. And
Yeah, so you were saying that with the multi-size patterns.
Right.
You can do the thing where you cut more in one and less in another to get kind of that shape.
Yes.
If you're expecting to then have to really enlarge or really shrink it, would you do it in sort of a proportional way? Do you know what I mean? So if you're expecting to have to both modify some of that and split, would you do it in kind of a proportional way and then do your splits, or would you do it the other way around?
I would do it proportional first.
Okay.
Cut out the pattern first. Measure your pattern pieces, match it up with your measurements that you have taken, and that's when you do the splitting.
Okay.
And that's also where having the difference between your front measurements and your back measurements can come in handy as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Oh, yes.
Charlie, could you explain what ease is and how that affects?
I'm sorry, could you repeat yourself?
Could you explain what ease is in your pattern, how much extra fabric you need around your body, and how that would affect this process? Because you need to have a couple inches around, not just your body size, but a couple of extra inches for movement, and it can vary.
Oh, yeah, that's ease.
And so when you're doing this, you need to also know how much ease you should have.
Yes, it's going to depend a lot on your fabric. Knit fabrics usually have negative ease, so they measure slightly smaller than you are. Fabrics that have no give to them whatsoever, you might want a lot of ease. And it also depends on if it's something that you plan on sitting down on or moving your arms and stuff like that.
And for reference, you can find ease charts. So it'll say, do you want a close fitting outfit or a really loose fitting outfit? And it'll give standard ease amounts for the key areas. So it'll give standard ease for bust, waist, and hip based on how close fitting or loose fitting you want your clothing to be. So,
And I think to add to that, some patterns will have on the sleeve or somewhere, to make sure to like stretch
Yes.
the fabric to this point if you want it to fit properly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I think that's all.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you transfer your pattern, do you just trace it?
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you make all your modifications to your, what you just trace to? Or do you make your modifications to?
So what I would do is I don't even cut out my pieces like this. I take out, these all come as a large sheet. I'll lay them out on a table, put the wax paper over it, tape multiple pieces together until it's like the size of my pattern piece, trace around it, and then I include all of the extra notes. So like this one here, someone was asking earlier about seam allowance. So like up here, there's even a note that says for the neckline, you have a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and you have your center front, and you have your bust line, you have your markings for all your match points. So I mark all of that on my pattern. I fold this piece back up, stick it in the envelope, and never look at it again unless I need this pattern. So if I'm going to do another costume or make it for someone else, then I'll take it out and start over.
Just want to add, having helped her with that, don't buy the really expensive, really good wax paper. Get the cheapest one you can. It just works so much better for tracing. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Sorry, he's my husband. So
Yes.
I
You
know.
guys need to go to Lowe's. Landscape stabilization fabric. Don't iron it.
There's a question on the right.
Yes.
Okay, as cosplayers, we all know that a pattern that you get in the pattern book rarely is exactly what's going to be in the design. So
Right.
let's say you like the collar on a bow pattern and you want the shirt pattern and the sleeve pattern from 3 different things. How are they going to match up and what are you going to be doing? Because I don't know. I mean, yes, there's a standardization. However, right?
So, one of the ways that you match them up is by making sure that your side seam is nice and vertical. If you are putting one skirt on a different top, make sure those side seams are vertical. If they're vertical, you'll be able to do it. Also, make sure center back, center front are lined up. And you can do that with your measurements that you've taken with the front and back measurements.
The other thing is, these will have like pattern notches too. So these dots here is one of the match points on sleeves. So some sleeves will have a lot of gather in the shoulder cap and some will have very little. And so this dot here helps match up how much of that part of the pattern is. And this matches up for where the front and the back of your sleeve is. So you can also measure along here and measure like the sleeve cap of your other one to make sure that they'll line up.
Yeah.
And it's also why people suggest doing a muslin too. Once your tissue fitting is done, you do the tissue fitting first, and then you cut out your first fabric is like really cheap fabric, or something you don't care about. Like some people recommend getting flat sheets or fabric from the thrift store, so that it's really cheap.
Flat sheets from the thrift store are great for making a muslin.
And then that way, because even fitting a tissue, like you can fit this really good, but then once you translate it from the paper into fabric is going to be different. And that's kind of why I'm really excited about using this for patterns, because
this stuff is great.
You can see through it.
Yes.
And it kind of moves and wiggles very similar to fabric.
Yes.
So that's why I'm really excited to maybe advance my steps from working with the wax paper onto something like this, so that I can still do a lot of that tracing, a lot of that cutting, but then as you said earlier, this is like ridiculously cheap.
Yes.
And then you can kind of have that to make sure all your fabric pieces fit.
Yes.
What do you do for making like the muslin when you're going to be using like a super expensive fabric that you know it does not have the same like ease as a muslin?
You want to try to find fabric for your muslin that has the same amount of ease as what you're working with. If what your final costume is going to be is say like neoprene, find some cheap fabric that has about the same amount of stretch to it. It's hard to translate a non-stretchable muslin to a stretchable muslin. Just find something really, really cheap. If anybody lives in the area, S.R. Harris remnant bins, great, $2 a yard. Okay, anything else? I think we're done then. And Christina and Alyssa.